Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to NerdTube. I am Zam, and I'm going to be talking about Game of Thrones, House of the Dragons, the first episode, also known as the Hairs of the Dragon. And unfortunately, I'm on my own today, as it was a bit difficult to get some other people to join me on this particular pilot. But let's just get cracking to it because I've got a lot to talk about, and I want to give you my opinions of this show. Actually, I will give you my opinions on the show initially. I did enjoy it. This maybe it's nostalgia, even though the original Game of Thrones, has only been off for 3 years. I did enjoy this opening episode. It gave me everything I wanted in a Game of Thrones episode. A bit of skullduggery, a little bit of underhanded rivalry. We also got some epic violence. We got some sexy scenes as well. We've got some dragons too. I mean, this is Game of Thrones at the end of the day, and I thoroughly enjoyed this opening episode. So I'm going to just talk about some of the scenes in this episode, and then we can talk about those scenes and maybe break it down a little bit. So we're in the first century of the Targaryen dynasty. At the end of the first century, the Targaryens at the height of its strength, with 10 adult dragons at their command. King Jaehaerys reigns over King's Landing and Westeros for the last 60 years, and we're having 60 years of peace. But both his male heirs have died, and with a council of over 1,000 people, they kind of vote for his successor. Prince Viserys, the king's cousin, was voted in. There was another lady as well who could have been also voted in, but she, being a woman, unfortunately for her, meant that she was never going to be taken seriously, because in this part of the world, in this particular time, women are not seen as successors. She was also known as the queen that never was, and maybe she'll be expanded upon in future episodes. But this kind of begins the beginning of the end of the Targaryen dynasty, because with so many potential heirs, a previous Game of Thrones to what we kind of know from the original Game of Thrones is happening at this particular timeline, because this is set almost 200 years before the death of the Mad King and the birth of Daenerys. This Game of Thrones is amongst the Targaryens. They are going to be basically fighting and killing each other during the course of these current upcoming episodes, and also in future seasons in who claims the throne. And by the time the original Game of Thrones begins, we can see that they're just down to a couple of Targaryens, Daenerys being one of them. So the effects of that starts here, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing where this goes. Okay, so we see a dragonfly, a dragonfly over King's Landing, and we see a young Targaryen. Her name is Rhaenyra, and she's flying that particular dragon. She's the daughter of the current king. She visits her mother, who's heavily pregnant. Now, as we all know, when it comes to Targaryens, incest is how they do things. They want people of pure blood, and yeah, there's a lot of sister fucking. But I do think Viserys' wife is not his sister. I think it's his cousin. We also see the King's Council, and they're a combination of other Targaryens. We've got the Master of Laws, Master of Coin. We've got a Maester as well. I apologize for all that noise. I've got birds flying around everywhere. And they've got this particular, they're talking about particular things, and something I think we'll see in the future as well, called about a character called the Crab Eater. He was very briefly mentioned, and I'm sure we'll see him soon. But he's a pirate, and I believe he's killing pirates as well. So that particular news doesn't really concern Viserys too much. What he really cares about is an upcoming jousting tournament, and this harkens back to season 1 of Game of Thrones when we had the jousting tournament there. Now, Rhaenyra, sorry, she sees her uncle Daemon, and Daemon, in my opinion, is abbreviation on demon, because this guy Daemon, during the course of the episode, we kind of find out what he's really about, and he's sitting on the Iron Throne. And the Iron Throne at this particular period looks a lot more menacing as well. Yes, it's made out of swords and stuff, but it's surrounded by swords as well, all sticking out the ground, pointing upwards, menacing. He's the brother of the king. and he is also heir to the throne because the king currently doesn't have a son. He has a daughter, but as I said earlier, women are not really looked upon as heirs. Um, Feeling very, I don't know, royal like, so to speak, and feeling like he can do whatever the fuck he wants. There's an air of arrogance that comes from Damon, but he does have a good relationship with his niece, which is the daughter of the king. But then again, when it comes to Targaryens, they have more than just good relationships. It could end up being coupling, so to speak. But regardless, he gives his niece a Valerian steel necklace. We'll see what pans out from that in the future. Rhaenyra and her friend Alicent are reading by a weirwood tree. Now, if you remember the weirwood trees in the original Game of Thrones, they were those trees that were was it the children of the forest. Those elf-looking sort of creatures. They're in relation to them, and they got like faces carved on the tree. But yeah, there's a weirwood tree in King's Landing. Rhaenyra tells Alice that she doesn't want her she wants her father to have a son because her father desperately wants a son. I think because of all the burden that kind of put upon her to a degree, or like in the fact that her father is acting so desperate for a son that she desperately wants her father to have that son. The king has we see the king, he's like going through a little bit of a medical procedure, and he has like a sort of like pus like legion on his back. Now this could be grayscale. I'm not so sure about that. It could be. The Macers don't know exactly what it is, and I'm not sure if they knew about grayscale. And, this is, less than 200 years, up till Game of Thrones when, Sam knew about grayscale when he became a Maester. But he got this mark by sitting on the Iron Throne, and the Iron Throne itself, because it's full of daggers and stuff like that, it will cut you, it will mark you. And if he has got grayscale, I feel that this king is not going to be long for this show. The queen's in the bath. I think she might be in the milk of the poppy type of sort of bath, and she tells the king this is the last birth she'll give. The queen's had several miscarriages, several stillbirths. I mean, she really is just like a machine to give an heir to this king, but she can't handle it anymore. And even though she's heavily pregnant with this particular child, she says to her king that once I give birth, that's it, I'm done. And we see Damon now. He addresses City Watch. This is like maybe the prelude to the Golden Company. I'm not 100% sure, but City Watch are basically like the police of King's Landing. They wear gold cloaks. The military like police force, and they're not going to fuck around. They're going to go into King's Landing, and they're going to, or what we end up seeing them do, is chopping off the hands of thieves, castrating rapists, and decapitating murderers. Thank you, cousin Cheeto. I am the Game of Thrones of NerdTube. Yes, thank you very much for that. So that was a really brutal scene, by the way, seeing all of that. And it kind of harkened back. I mean, this one guy got his dick chopped off because he was a rapist. Yeah, obviously he deserves it. But to see it was still very brutal. And some of the people who had their hands chopped off for thievery, that's where I kind of draw the line, because people sometimes steal to survive, not because they're kleptomaniacs. But yep, these people got their hands chopped off, and we saw all of that. Kind of reminded me of the time when Jaime Lannister got his hand chopped off. And obviously we saw a guy who was a murderer getting his head chopped off as well. So yeah, the brutality of Game of Thrones is here. And what I liked about this brutality as well, thank you very much. Oh, the goat, thank you very much. What I liked about this brutality is that this show is not fucking around. It's really going to give us everything we want in a Game of Thrones show. Damon is also fucking the local talent in a brothel, but his thoughts are kind of bothering him, and we see him not being able to continue his shagging. And the talent he was fucking ends up comforting and reminding him that he is a badass. He's the heir to the Iron Throne. So we'll see how that pans out. There might be like a relationship between this brothel worker and Daemon Targaryen. So we get to the jousting tournament, and that begins. The king tells the crowd there's some good news. His wife is in labor, and they'll be giving births, and she'll be giving birth soon. And then we see Damon, and it's his turn to joust, and he picks his opponent, which is Sir Wayne of it's either Wayne or Dwayne. I missed out on the name, but so I'll call him Wayne for now. So Wayne of Hightower. He's the son of the Hand of the King, and because the Hand of the King, who's played by Risa Funds, is also known as Otto Hightower. And during the course of the episode, we kind of see that Otto Hightower and Daemon Targaryen, they don't really like each other too much. So Daemon Targaryen purposely picks his opponent to be Otto's son. And he fucks him over. Like Otto's son initially gets a good joust on him, but second time round when they're jousting, he fucks him over, and swipes his leg. He swipes the horse's legs, and his Otto's son has a bad fall. It was very amusing, and it was just there basically to rub it in on Otto. At the same time as the joust is happening, the queen is giving birth, but there's a problem with the pregnancy. The baby hasn't turned, and we do cut back and forth between the pregnancy and the birth of this upcoming Targaryen, as well as the jousting as well. So we're cutting back and forth between the scenes, and the jousting has kind of gone full barbaric, with the knights now no longer being honorable, and they're just fucking getting their weapons out, their swords and flails and their axes out, and they're killing each other basically in front of everyone. It's brutal as hell. King Viserys, he's basically by his wife now because she's going through a lot of pain, and this moment is brilliant because this is so Game of Thrones like as well. He knows from speaking to the Maester that either both his wife and his child dies, or his wife dies because the baby hasn't turned. So he tells his wife he loves her, and she goes, "What does that mean?" And that was a brilliant moment because she knew something up was going to happen. And we're talking about a time as well when there's probably no anesthetic. There's no way of keeping her, no way of making this procedure not painful. There's no way of making her fall, go to sleep. She's getting carved open, while she's in the middle of giving birth as well. And the pain and the squeamishness of this scene was what we expect from Game of Thrones. It was brutal. This particular king, he gave a fuck more about his unborn baby than his living wife. And maybe there are certain anecdotes that kind of relate to today's world, especially with what's happening in America with Roe v. Wade. Maybe I'm kind of reaching on that a little bit. This was made obviously way before that fucking decision was made. But regardless, that was a gruesome scene, because they're cutting her belly open so they can get to the baby. They're giving her a cesarean, so to speak, a brutal cesarean. And she dies during the course of this. Like, she just lost too much blood, and you could just tell that she was going through a lot of pain. And once the baby's delivered and the wife is now dead, the queen is now dead, the maester gives the king his son, and I believe the king names his son Bane or Baelor or some shit like that. But Bane is the abbreviation because, as there's like a British undertone in all of this Game of Thrones, one of the things us Brits like to do is abbreviate names. The funeral for the queen commences, and we also see that the baby had died. Now, this was a shocker because I had no idea that the baby had died until the funeral. So we see both bodies wrapped up, and Rhaenyra is now kind of wondering if, by speaking to her uncle Daemon, if her father found true happiness for that brief moment when her baby brother was alive. Regardless, she says Dracarys, which is what you say when you want to get your dragon to burn shit up, because there is a dragon on the scene of this funeral. Sorry, not Dracarys, Dracarys. And the dragon burns up those bodies Hindu style. The Hand of the King organizes the council to now talk about the new heir to the throne, because with the baby dying pretty much at childbirth, we need to have an heir. We need to have a successor ready and waiting. And Daemon is now back in contention to being that successor. But Rhaenyra is also being considered, but no woman has ever been heir to the Iron Throne before. So we are obviously talking about times that are changing. With all this talk of a successor to the king himself actually throws a fit, because it just reminds him that his wife and his son had just died, and there's all this squabbling going on amongst his council, and it just pisses him off, and he walks off with a huff. Now, Alicent, who is the daughter of the Hand of the King, with a little persuasion from her father, is basically told to comfort the king, and she has a book of historical tales. The king is also carving this model out of a city from stone. Now, I'm going to give you guys a spoiler. Alicent and the king, Viserys, they actually do end up bonding. This wasn't the intention of Otto. He was just there. He just sent his daughter there to comfort the king, but a bond does happen between the two of them. So I think we'll see that blossom during the course of this show. Maybe during this season, but in my opinion, King Viserys won't last season one. That's just my personal opinion. So Prince Daemon's in the Hall House, and he gives a speech in celebration, mocking his nephew's death, calling him the heir of the day. Word gets back to the king, and he's basically furious with Daemon, and he basically says to him, "You will not be the new heir to the throne. I'm going to be I'll be naming a new heir to the throne." Daemon's obviously pissed off by this, because I think Otto has a real issue with Daemon because they don't like each other. I think he made the toast that Daemon gave come out as very egregious towards the king and mocking him. But Daemon, I think, was actually trying to salute what happened and honor the death of his nephew, but because of Otto's words and his twisting ways. And don't get me wrong, Otto is probably a better person than Daemon, but nobody's perfect. The gray areas are there. That's why Game of Thrones is so great. He kind of puts it into the king's head that Daemon was mocking your dead son, and probably your daughter and your wife as well. And this really pisses off King Viserys. So Viserys, now no longer putting Daemon in contention. And that scene, by the way, between Viserys and Daemon was really good, because he kind of reminded Daemon, like, this, know your fucking place. Say one more word, I'll cut your tongue out. And I like that very much. But now Viserys, he's, in one of these underground caverns in King's Landing. He's putting his hand over the candles with the flames. Just reminding you, when it comes to Targaryens, that they're fireproof. And he calls his daughter Rhaenyra in. And he basically tells her a story about dragons, that they can't necessarily be controlled and trusted. But he also while talking about that, he then goes into sorry, I apologize. While talking about the dragons, he then basically tells his daughter, "You're going to be the new heir to the throne." And this is like game breaking. This is groundbreaking, because she's a woman, and women are never really known to be heirs. So, yep, Daemon Targaryen is out. She's in. At the same time, whilst appointing this thing upon her, he also King Viserys, that is, also talks about an impending doom. This is something that's been passed on by Targaryen to Targaryen since an Aegon Targaryen from way back in the day, saying that a long winter will eventually come, and with that will bring demons down from the north. And when that happens, all of Westeros must unite, this particular and fight this particular threat. So this is talking about the upcoming, not upcoming. I mean, what we saw in Game of Thrones, the eventual unity amongst particular factions to fight the White Walkers. Obviously, Cersei will be putting a spanner in the works regarding all of that, because we know what sort of person she is. She doesn't give a fuck about all of that. But regardless, the White Walkers do get briefly mentioned, their impending threat, but they just don't know exactly when that is. But when the long winter does come, that's when the White Walkers will come. But at this particular point now, we're in the height of summer, and in this particular world, summer can last for years, decades even. So so even though that was briefly mentioned and that was a nice Easter egg, I don't think we'll be getting too much White Walker action unless we go up to the wall and all of that bollocks, and we see the Black and the Night's Watch, and maybe we get some interactions with them that way. But I don't think they'll be getting too much White Walker action. This is all about the Targaryen civil war, because with Rhaenyra now taking the appointment of being the heir, and Daemon no longer being the heir, but feeling probably that he rightfully belongs as the future king of Westeros. This is going to cause a lot of division, and a lot of Targaryens are going to be killed in the process. And this will probably end up with, obviously, Dany in 174 years time from now being the one of two Targaryens left. Obviously, Jon Snow's a Targaryen as well, but he's only half a Targaryen. So because Targaryens, they do that brother sister fucking malarkey. So yeah, this is the beginning. The division starts here. So it'll be interesting to see where we go in the future. I like this episode. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It really tried to give us everything we would want in a Game of Thrones show. We want sex, we got it. We want violence, we got it. We want backstabbing, we got it. We want skullduggery, we got it. We want intrigue, we got it. We got politics, we got it. We got it all. So Into Dales is pilot episode, and we got some jousting as well. So yeah, I very much enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to next week. Now I know some people were complaining. Some people I know personally, and some of the reviews I read complaining about the uncanny valley with the dragons and some of the special effects and the look of the show as well, and maybe the acting and even the wigs. Like, it's weird in a way. Like, none of that shit concerned me too much. We're watching it. I mean, this is not necessarily a period drama because it's almost set in a different universe, in a different world. But regardless, I was okay with everything. I really was. The look of the show was good. I thought the acting was okay. I was okay with the special effects, and you can tell that there was more of a budget on this show as well, because they were able to make certain scenes look a lot more grand than it once did. When Game of Thrones first came on our screens. With season 1, they never had the sort of budget it had by season 6 and season 7 and season 8. Did it go up to season 8? I can't fucking remember now. Regardless, great opening episode. Love listening to the Game of Thrones music and all of the sounds that reminds you of Game of Thrones as well. I can't wait to see where this goes. And yeah, tragedy ahead. It's going to be great. Let me know what you think of this show. Did you like it as much as I did? I loved it. I'm going to give episode 1 I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I want to give it a higher mark. I really do. But I'm reserving myself because there might be better things to come. This is the pilot episode. My judgment was being held back a little bit. I was expecting the worst to a degree. So considering it was better than I expected, 8 out of 10 is what the show gets for me. So yeah, can't wait for next week. Can't wait to talk about it. And it'd be good just to get back on that Game of Thrones train again, because I did think that this particular train had left the station when it came to Game of Thrones, when they tried to do this House of the Dragon malarkey. But I'm glad to be wrong, because Game of Thrones is fucking awesome. Game of Thrones has always been fucking awesome. Yes, the original series faltered by giving us a very subpar final season, and they rushed shit out. It just became a big pile of bollocks. I'm really hoping they learn from their mistakes and don't repeat history by doing the same shit as they've done before. All the stories regarding the Dance of the Dragon, which is the Targaryen Civil War, it's been written. There's nothing. We don't have to wait for George R. R. Martin to come up with a new book or anything like that, which is kind of what kind of occurred with the latter seasons of Game of Thrones. So there is a destination to all of this. We know where things lead. So it's all about the journey. And I can't wait to follow this journey, but it's going to be fascinating. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to NerdTube, the greatest YouTube channel you never heard of. Take care. Bye-bye.